Picture this, a sold-out stadium, 25,000 voices, flags whipping through the air, hearts hammering in unison. The most electric grass court crowd England had seen all summer. And then, at the single most decisive moment of the match, the exact heartbeat where history was about to be written, something happened that no one, not the players, not the commentators, not one person in that arena, could have ever seen coming. Not a rain delay. Not a controversial call. Not a smashed racket. Something so wildly, jaw-droppingly bizarre that within 24 hours, over 100 million people had watched the clip, and half the internet had already turned it into a meme. This is the story of the Birmingham Open final. And by the time we reach the moment that broke the internet, you'll understand exactly why people are calling it the most unforgettable scene of the entire grass season. Let's rewind to the beginning, because to understand why this moment landed the way it did, you need to understand everything that came before it. Alex's road to that final was anything but easy. Nothing was handed to her at the Birmingham Open. She battled through rain delays that stretched matches into long, stop-start grinds. She survived a brutal second set against Alina Charva, finding herself down 0-2 and looking dangerously vulnerable. She fought through a mentally and physically draining quarterfinal against Menenkia Senk. Every single round was a war. And that's exactly what made the atmosphere on final day so electric. The Filipino fans who had flown in from Manila, from London, from every corner of the world, they weren't just spectators. They believed in her with a kind of devotion fans rarely get to feel. The Laban chants, "Fight on," shook the roof of Edgbaston Priory Club every time she stepped onto the court. Philippine flags were everywhere. Even the most seasoned tennis veterans at the venue admitted they'd never witnessed anything like it. Not at a WTA 125 event. Not with this kind of raw, personal, emotional intensity pouring down from the stands. Alex fed off every bit of it. You could see it in the bounce in her step, in the way she smiled up at the crowd after a big winner. She knew exactly what this meant to people. She felt the weight of it, and instead of being crushed by it, she seemed to rise with every game. Standing across the net was Nicola Bardanova of the Czech Republic. And here's what made this final so much richer than a normal title match. These two were friends. Real friends. Doubles partners. Just 6 days earlier, they'd played together in the doubles draw and lost in the first round. 6 days later, they were standing on opposite sides of the net, fighting for a championship. There's a strange tension that comes with competing against someone you genuinely care about. Every winner feels a little complicated. Every error from your friend triggers a flicker of relief you instantly feel guilty about. You could see that dynamic in the warm-up, in the small smiles they exchanged, in the way both of them seemed looser and more wound-up at the same time. Then the match began, and all of that faded into pure competition. The first set was everything the crowd hoped for, and everything the players' coaches feared. A relentless, no-quarter battle. Alex and Bardanova traded breaks like they were exchanging notes, each pulling ahead only to be clawed back. The tennis was sharp, both players gliding across the grass, reading each other's patterns with a kind of familiarity that only comes from years of practicing together. Neither could break away until 5-5, when Bardanova found something extra. A combination of precise placement and raw nerve earned her the break. She moved to 6-5 and held to take the first set 7-5. The crowd felt it instantly. The Philippine flags dipped, not in defeat, but in that collective held breath that comes when your fighter has dropped the first set of a final and you're not sure how she'll respond. The second set started even worse. Bardanova carried her momentum straight into the first game, broke Alex again, and suddenly her coach was leaning forward with the quiet, controlled energy of someone who senses an upset brewing. For a moment, it genuinely looked like this could be over in straight sets. The crowd had gone quiet, and it was a heavier silence than before. But here's the thing about Alex that her fans already know, and the rest of the tennis world is starting to learn. She refuses, almost stubbornly, almost maddeningly, to accept that the story is over just because things look bad. Down 0-2 in the second set, she didn't panic. She didn't overhit. She didn't try to reinvent her game on the fly. She simply reset, recommitted, and broke right back to level it at 1-1. And once she found that level, everything shifted. She started playing with more freedom. Her serve, tentative early on, suddenly started finding the corners. Her ground strokes had more bite. From 2-2, she went on a tear, winning 4 of the next 5 games to close out the second set 6-3 in just 38 minutes. Just like that, it was a decider. 1 set. Winner takes the title. Loser goes home with a runner-up trophy and a story to tell. The third set is where everything came to a head. Alex's serve, usually a part of her game opponent's target, became a genuine weapon under pressure. She found massive first serves exactly when she needed them. At 1-2, facing double break point, she held. At 2-2, she dug out of a 0-30 hole and came through with a break to lead 4-2. The crowd could feel it building. The chants grew louder. The flags waved harder. And then Bardonova did what great competitors do. She refused to fold. Down 3-5, she fought back with pure heart, clawing it back to 5-5. The crowd fell silent again. The set was level. The match was wide open. And 25,000 people had stopped breathing. This is the moment everything changed. This is the moment the Birmingham Open became something the world would be talking about, not just in tennis circles, but everywhere. Alex stepped to the baseline at 5-5 in the decider to serve. Every point now carried championship implications. The crowd had gone eerily still, that specific kind of silence that only exists in sport, when the tension becomes something you can physically feel pressing down on your shoulders. She hit her first serve deep into the box. Bardonova returned it deep and wide. The rally stretched to 12 shots, both players constructing the point with total precision, neither willing to make the first mistake. Then Alex made her move. She came to the net. A bold call on a massive point. Bardonova, pushed into the corner, went for the lob. It floated up, hung in the Birmingham evening air, and landed just long. Advantage, Alex. And then, from somewhere in the stands, a figure appeared. Not a tournament official. Not a ball kid who'd wandered onto the court by mistake. A fan, a young man in a bright orange shirt, vaulted clean over the barrier separating the crowd from the court and took off sprinting, full commitment, zero hesitation, straight toward the net. Security came from every direction immediately. But this guy was fast and he was weaving. The players froze. Alex stood at the baseline, racket still raised, watching with an expression caught somewhere between confusion and pure disbelief. Bardonova, across the net, wore the exact same look. And the crowd, 25,000 people who had been holding their breath for a championship-deciding serve, erupted into a sound that wasn't quite cheering and wasn't quite screaming, but something in between. That chaotic noise humans make when reality stops making sense. The man reached the net. He spun to face the stands, grabbed the hem of his orange shirt, and pulled it over his head. Painted across his chest, in bold black letters, the cameras caught it perfectly. For words. Alex, marry me. The stadium went dead silent. Maybe 2 seconds. Maybe 3. A genuine pause where 25,000 people collectively processed what they were seeing. Then security tackled him to the grass, and the crowd absolutely lost it. Not in anger. Not the ugly kind of reaction a crowd has when something goes wrong. In pure, uncontrolled, helpless laughter. The kind that erupts when something is so absurd, so far beyond anything you expected to witness today, that your brain simply has no other response. Alex, still at the baseline, racket still in hand, wore an expression that would become one of the most screenshotted images of the summer. Shock, amusement, and underneath both, the fierce focus of someone who knows the match isn't over and needs to find her way back to it mentally. Across the net, Bardonova had doubled over. Not a polite chuckle, fully doubled over, hands on knees, completely unable to hold it together. Even the umpire, and if you've ever watched professional tennis, you know umpires are trained from birth to show zero emotion about anything, was visibly fighting back a smile. Security dragged the man toward the player tunnel. As the doors swung shut behind him, people close enough swore they could still hear him shouting his declaration of love as the tunnel swallowed him whole. Gone. Court clear. Time to resume, but the stadium needed a minute. That suffocating, held-breath tension from before had been replaced by something else entirely. The buzzing, disbelieving, slightly manic energy of a crowd that knows it just witnessed something it'll be telling people about for years. One fan, caught on camera with her hand over her mouth, turned to the person beside her and asked quietly, "Did that actually just happen?" Her friend just shook his head, speechless. The commentary booth wasn't doing much better. One commentator, 3 decades covering professional tennis, said on air that he had never, not once in his career, seen a marriage proposal at championship point. His co-commentator, watching the replay, simply lost it laughing. Not the polished broadcast laugh. The real one. The cameras found Alex again. She'd retreated to the baseline, bouncing the ball the way players do when they're trying to find their rhythm, trying to climb back inside the match in their head. But there was a small smile on her face. Just a crack in the composure. Bardanova caught her eye from across the net and gave her a shrug. Small, eloquent, saying everything without a word. Only in tennis, right? Alex let the smile widen, just for a second. Then she locked it back down. She still had a championship to win. The umpire called for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, please, play will resume. Miss Eala to serve." 15-30, the crowd found its voice again. Not gradually, but all at once, like a wave. The Philippine flags began moving again. The Laban chants returned, louder than before, fueled by adrenaline and disbelief and that specific kind of joy that comes from sharing something ridiculous with 25,000 strangers. Something in the stadium had shifted. The suffocating tension that had built over 2.5 hours had cracked open, not broken, but punctured. And what poured out was something lighter, stranger, and somehow even more powerful. Because now everyone in that stadium, Alex included, had been reminded that they were all just people, watching a game on a summer evening in Birmingham. And sometimes life is gloriously, completely absurd. She walked back to the baseline. She served. And in the clip that went viral within the hour, a camera operator following the match caught the exact moment. Alex bouncing the ball before her first serve, shaking her head one more time, still processing it all, and then her expression hardening into something focused, clear, and completely locked in. The footage of the proposal was online almost instantly. Multiple angles, multiple phones, all capturing the same chaos from different perspectives: the orange shirt, the sprint, the reveal, the tackle, the crowd's reaction. Within hours, the clip had crossed 100 million views. 100 million. For context, that's not a number viral tennis moments typically reach. That's a number reserved for World Cup winning goals, championship buzzer beaters, the kind of once-in-a-generation sports moments that transcend the sport itself. And this one absolutely did. Hashtag Birmingham Proposal was trending at #1 simultaneously in the Philippines, the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, and Canada. Fans in Manila, who'd been glued to the match purely for the tennis, suddenly found themselves sharing the clip with people who